One time Jesus is walking from Bethany, going up to the temple, and he sees a fig tree. And this fig tree, the Bible says, that it had leaves. Now, one time, we used to preach those scriptures until we began to understand how fig trees operate. When the way the fig tree operates, the leaves are a sign to show that the fig tree has fruit. You see the way when you'll see it produces the fig tree produces fruit and then leaves, not leaves and then fruit. So if a fig tree has leaves, it has fruit. Yes. So now Jesus sees the fig tree, and he says it had so much leaves in it. So the expectation is that the fig tree has a lot of fruit. And he's now drawn by the leaves of the fig tree with the expectation to find fruit. So when he goes to the fig tree, he finds that it has no fruit. That's when he curses it. Because how do you show me that? How do you attract me? How do you invite me to come and enjoy your fruit and you have no fruit? The same way, how do we, that relates to the place that the fig tree had a facade. How do we exemplify and show that we carry fruit in us, we carry grace in us, and then when you actually come to see what fruit is this, you find that there is none.
Was the fig tree a whitewashed tomb? Was the fig tree an adoration of a whitewashed tomb? Nice on the outside.
And nothing on the inside. Exactly. And you see, that's now where we begin to understand God has really called us to a place of multiplication. And while he does not give us the method of multiplication, he has given us the spirit that multiplies. In the same way, when you look at the Bible, in Genesis chapter 1, when you read the whole story of the recreation of creation, you begin to understand. He says, he calls things from things. And I want you to see a certain pattern. He says, when he wants vegetation, he calls it out from the ground. But even before vegetation, when he wants the ground, he calls it out from the water. He says, let dry ground appear. So it appeared out of the water. And then he comes and says, okay, now the dry ground has appeared. He says, now let the dry ground, or from the dry ground, produce all manner of vegetation. And then he stops there. Then he says, now this vegetation, or these trees, let them have fruit, and in that fruit let it have seed that will produce according to its kind. And when he creates the animals, he creates them according to their kind. But now, two things here. One, in the tree, he gives not only, he does not just create tree. God did not need to recreate, or for lack of a better word, he didn't need any more than what he did. He just needed to produce the tree, and the tree has fruit, and the fruit has seed. So now, when the fruit falls and it dies, or in the case that probably it's not been eaten by someone, but when the fruit falls and the seed falls and into the ground, it's able to produce another tree. So God did not need, for lack of a better word, to create a forest. He just needed to create a tree. Now, because now what is management? If all these fruits fall into one place, around, not all of them will be able to germinate. Not all of them will be able to grow. So what is management? Management is when someone understands that this tree produces fruit that has seed, and I will take this fruit or take these seeds and scatter them so that they're able to create more trees. Because you see, they can't all of them grow in the same place. So management is me taking those fruits or those seeds, scattering them over longer distances, and then I produce a forest. So One, we see in the tree, God provides the system of multiplication. And that is why in man, what did he give? Say, let us make man in our own image and after our likeness. So even before God comes and announces dominion to this man, God has already given to the man his image, being that he is spirit, and his likeness. And then he comes and says, let this man have dominion. So he begins with the dominion mandate. Let him multiply. So that multiplication, when God says let him multiply, he just says, I've given you the ability to multiply. Then he says, let him subdue. Subdue means there are places that are wasteful and you have to now make them productive again. Subduing is not just about taking territories. Subduing is also when you go into a territory that was unproductive and you make it productive. That's subduing. And then it says, it repeats again, let them be fruitful, number one. Let them multiply. Let them subdue, and then let them have dominion. So it begins first by being fruitful. You cannot multiply unless you produce fruit. The same way the tree cannot multiply without producing fruit, because the seed is in the fruit. You understand? But now, not only does it, when he speaks to man, but we also see another pattern. The first pattern is the tree has fruit, and the fruit has seed. And the seed is able to give us more fruits. So one tree that has 10 fruit has the capability of in it by itself to produce 10 trees. But God doesn't stop there, because before that we see the other system. And it's the system of reciprocity, for lack of a better word. Because the water produces the land produces the trees, and the same land produces the animals. So the tree feeds off from the soil feeds off also from the water and from the tree. In this case, if this tree falls fruit, falls leaves, and animals drop whatever they drop, the droppings, they become nutrients that feed the soil. And together with the water, they're able to feed this tree. If this tree is fully fed, it is able to not only feed others, but feed back the same soil. Because when it drops its fruit, when it drops its leaves, those, they decay, they become manure again, they feed back the soil. So the tree feeds from the soil as the soil feeds from the tree. The same thing we see in the hydrological circle. The water evaporates, become vapor, which condenses, becomes clouds, releases, becomes rain. That rain comes back and feeds the lake, the rivers, the oceans. And then the system happens again and again and again and again. And in that, God also began to speak to us the system of reciprocity. That you need to give from where you get, so that as you build what you get, it gives you, and then you build again. So that system, and that's management. Management is, I know, this thing that gives me money, this thing that gives me resources, I need to feed it so that it can feed me. Now, many of us, we feed off from things, but we never feed into those things that we are doing. And that's why we realize people build enterprises and they die. Because the same pocket, you're supposed to have one pocket to feed and one pocket to receive. The same way the Bible comes and talks about it, says he gives seed to the sower and bread to the eater. Now, the mystery is you can be both a sower and an eater. So what you need to understand is that things God will give you that ought to be seed. And there are things that God will give you that ought to be bread. Now the challenge comes in when the eater eats the seed. Because now the sower cannot sow the bread.
Automatically the system is broken.
Yes.